Hey everyone, John Henry here, slingshotfutures.com, and welcome to the daily futures and crypto market outlook for tomorrow's trading. Tomorrow being the 3rd of the month. Welcome to October. Hopefully everyone had a restful weekend. Coming into October, so far, the first trading day, we're looking pretty good. We had a decent amount of movement. Everything was going along pretty well. So knock on some wood. Hopefully this continues, and we should be good to go for October. Now, as always, before we jump into the charts, make sure to swing on over to slingshotfutures.com, scroll down, and click on the Join the Daily Outlook newsletter. That's going to let you sign up on our newsletter list so you'll be notified every time one of these videos comes out. Along with that, in the newsletter itself, we go over different things like stocks and cryptos and futures, and you name it, it's going to show up in there at some point as long as it's moving. It's just a great way to kind of get a heads up on what's going on. So make sure you sign up for that if you haven't done so already. And then, of course, the live trader and subscription and trial info. From here, you can sign up for a 3-day trial to the room. It's a really good way to get kind of a feel for how everything works. You sit down with us for a couple days, you see the live trading, you see how everything works, you can see our charts, you can see the trades that we're looking at taking, and just how we generally break down the market throughout the day. So a really good way to get a heads up, and just kind of an inside look and feel in terms of how everything runs. Now, taking a look at the overall movement today, the euro, for the most part, a lot of the movement was taken care of in the overnight session. Another one of those days where I wish I lived in Europe to catch some of these early morning moves, because I am not going to wake up at, well, in this case, the move really started kicking off at 8 o'clock last night, all the way through the overnight session. By the time we came in for the US session, we were a little bit range-bound already, which makes a lot of sense. They've already had a huge amount of downside pressure. It's not very likely going to just keep on dropping through the bottom without at least taking a small little pause. And I think that's really where we are right now. We're more in the line of a small little pause. Now, if we zoom out a decent amount further here, we can see that we are in a much larger bear trend lower, and this is off the backs of that decent correction to the upside, tapping those monthly levels of resistance and that just generally big area of resistance we've been talking about for a while. And now we're cycling all the way back down. It's really tough to see this strong of a move not followed up with a little bit of a range or whatever they want to do here, and then try to get one more push to the downside. We have major monthly support at 17,700 just below us as well, and I think we're probably going to finish that objective sooner than later. Now, the overall movement, we are very low to the bottom. I have a hard time selling this low to an area of support. I would much rather try to get a better price. And really what I would like to see is for them to either come back to the highs of the wedge and then look for selling pressure there, or that's one option. We can break through the lows of the range low at around 17,800 and then continue down from there in a retest. Or option 3, right? They can break above the wedge, come back to the area of interest where the sellers took control last time between 18,100 up to 18,120 and then sell off there. Now, all 3 could happen or only one. We don't know yet, but those would be the 3 primary options that I'm looking for on the euro for continuation of the downside. Over on gold, mostly, again, the early morning session yesterday afternoon, in this case, going into the Euro session, had some really good movement. As we moved into the US session, a lot of range-bound stuff, not really a whole lot going on, and pretty quiet for most of the day. But it does appear as though we're putting in a little bit of a range low and a range high fits pretty well, too. We have 1279.2 at the highs of the range and 74.1 currently. May be able to bump that down just a little bit lower now that we have a little more info to around 73.9. But either way, we're forming a little bit of a range here, and the anticipation is that this range is going to continue for a little while. Now, again, we like to zoom out and get a bigger kind of overall feel of the market, and for right now, we have a pretty nice bear channel. Well, not really a channel, I suppose, I guess more of a wedge working its way lower, but we haven't come back to the highs of it. There's a lot of wide open space up here that hasn't been filled. That may mean that we get another dip lower and then start cycling back up, or they may just continue dropping through the bottom. Chances are, though, the way that I'm looking at this, not many traders are going to want to jump in way down here knowing that this is all the room they have before they start running into support. The smart traders, the ones who are going to be a little more patient, are going to be waiting for the area above those highs, right? Rising above 1280 towards the highs of monthly resistance and the top of the wedge, and looking for continuation of the downside from there. Now, if we can get all the stars to align and we draw across this wedge high, Notice that this range will eventually meet up with that. So if we can go range bound for a little while and then meet up and tap them all in the same place, that would be a beautiful area around 1280 to drive the market back down and finish off the objective. For me, I'm waiting for some better prices. I'm not really willing to sell down here right at the range low. Just feels like you're begging for some trouble. So I'd rather sit on hands for right now when it comes to gold and wait for a better entry point. Over on crude oil, had just a dive lower, huge bearish momentum to the downside, and that really didn't start kicking off until around 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock kicked the move off, and then she kept on going down, right? Just a hammer to the downside and massive amounts of bearishness. Now, the bearishness that we're seeing is reversing a little bit towards the end of the day, which isn't a big surprise. A lot of sellers are probably going to take profit as they go into the lunchtime session. Notice, right? 12 o'clock starts hitting. Everybody cashes out and heads down to the restaurant, the local high-quality 5-star, and they got to get some of that food in their system, and we've been correcting ever since then. So right now I'm looking at two different major areas of resistance that I'm looking for selling pressure off of. 5066, first of all, is where we found that continuation after the pause, right? We had that big rocket to the downside. It kept on going and going and going, and they found a little bit of a pullback, and that's the biggest pullback we had the whole way down before getting more continuation to the downside. That's one thing that kind of stands out. That's also where arguably the 3-push wedge bottom kind of kicked off, so that area is an area of interest. The better area that I'm looking for, we may not get it, but the one that I would love to see would be around 5094. 5094 is the first pullback they had after that big old drop down. And usually those areas become areas of interest. Not just because of continuation and, that's obviously structure in terms of swing highs and all that fun stuff. But just looking at it fundamentally, we had a big drive lower. A lot of sellers probably didn't take that or were already in before that happened, and they closed out of their positions. Then you have the chasers, right? The folks who missed the initial drop lower. They wait for a small bounce and they start hammering the sell side again with continuation. If they didn't exit and we start coming back to their original area of entry around 5094, they're going to begin defending their position. And that means that we should be able to find some resistance off of that 5094 as well. So 5066 and 5094 are the two big areas that I'm looking for continuation back down once again. And then over on the S&P, not a big surprise. S&P is still grinding higher. They're not really getting a whole lot done. They are pushing highs continuously. We are pushing into 2520s, 2527s now, actually, just tested not too long ago. And for the most part, it's still just a really grindy move up. Every time we have this big breakout move, it just goes nowhere for a little while. Big breakout move, we go nowhere for the majority of the day. Today, we were joking in the room how 9:30 hit and the market didn't even move. It's like it forgot that it opened today, and it finally picked up, got the big move, and then it's just kind of ground its way back up. Now, the big thing that's really standing out here is, if it wasn't obvious by the line cutting across the top there, we have a 3-push wedge top acting as a kind of a brick wall, really, that the market's going to have to get through. If they cannot surpass those highs at around 27 and keep it going up to probably 28 or 29 and then pull back and buy, we're going to have a shot at a deeper pullback. Now, the deeper pullback could just be to the wedge bottom, but what I would really like to see here is a little bit lower. Looking at the earlier price action, we can see major highs coming through here, a small little low, a big low. If we can come back down to that area, 19 3/4 is going to be a huge area of interest for a lot of buyers. Not only the buyers who are looking for sale prices, buying cheap, but also longer term buyers who don't want to buy the highs. They want to buy that better price so they can hang on for another couple days. Overall, we're at the highs right now. There's not really a whole lot we can do unless you don't mind taking on the additional risk of buying into the top of the 3-push wedge. Not my cup of tea. I'd rather wait for that deeper pullback with big eyes focused on 1975. So that's going to do it for the futures outlook. Now, in terms of the news for tomorrow, we do have a German holiday all day, and that's going to be the Unification Day. So the German markets are going to be closed for, well, and even if there are some German markets that are open, it's going to be very low volume regardless. So tomorrow might be a little bit of a slow, grindy one. We also have at 4:30 out of the UK the construction PMI for September forecasted at 51, and no U.S. news. So if a holiday wasn't bad enough, we also have no U.S. news. We're coming into October, right? A brand new month, a brand new week, everything stacking up in the same place. It might be a little bit of a slow, grindy one. We just have to play it a little bit safe going into tomorrow's price action. And, like we always talk about making that plan, tomorrow is going to be a big day to do that, like we're doing right now, so you have a game plan going into tomorrow's trading. Now, looking over at the crypto side of things, cryptos have had some really good momentum to the upside. Bitcoin is rocket shipping higher. We pushed into 4,400, a little bit above it. We're pulling back now, likely a lot of buyers taking profit there. But overall, it just looks like a train that isn't going to stop anytime soon. We have a huge amount of bullish pressure to the upside. Everything is looking really, really strong. And I think a lot of buyers are really just going to be waiting for a little more pullback. We're getting it right now, right? These shallow, little tiny pullbacks to the previous swing highs, into the cloud, previous major areas of structured support around 4260s. All of those areas are going to be snapped up by the buyers on this kind of rally up. It just isn't stopping. We had that deep pullback late last month, and ever since then, it's just been a rocket ship once again. And I think a lot of buyers are going to see this, and maybe they feel like they missed the train buying that dip like we were back then, and now they're just looking for a way in. So any pullback really is game. But right now, I'm looking for an area between 4,300 down to 4,260. I think is going to be a really nice hot spot area for some buying pressure and continuation back up. Now, switching gears a little bit and looking at Bitcoin Cash, a little bit of an opposite side of things here. We have Bitcoin Cash on a fairly bear momentum type move. We're still grinding lower. We're having a hard time with the buyers popping back above. They can't even get above the cloud. And we just keep grinding lower. Now, we were kind of joking about how they kept skipping the areas that we wanted to buy in a little bit lower, around 400, 375s, even a little bit further below that when we had that big dip down at around 300. They missed it by just a couple pennies and turned back up again. They may be trying to come back for a vengeance on that area. Now, that said, a couple things that we do want to keep in mind. Major support definitely going to be cutting through here around 411. Not to mention the big 400 level. It's going to be hard to ignore something like that. So around 400, big round number, Bitcoin Cash may find some support, but we're still kind of dealing with that falling area of resistance. They tried to break above it. It failed. It's now a little bit wider. So we have to play with still kind of the same scenario we've been stuck in for a long time here, dealing with a descending wedge with a flat bottom. And if they want to trap low, eyes are set at around 300 for the potential bounce back up. But for right now, I'm kind of all hands off deck when it comes to Bitcoin Cash. I'm just not that interested. Now, one other thing that we may be looking at and something to consider is Bitcoin Cash was part of the fork that Bitcoin had off of it. We have another fork coming in towards the end of October. So they may be kind of not sure what to do. What do you do with a forked currency when the primary one's getting another fork, right? What happens? So we're getting a little bit of confusion, I think, setting in here on Bitcoin Cash along with everything else. For me, I'm going to leave it alone for a little while until they give me some more info to work with. Over on Ethereum, still a very bearish market, at least on the hourly chart. The only way to get this to look like a bullish market would be to zoom way far out to something like a daily chart, and even then, it still doesn't look that great. The big thing that obviously stands out here is this monstrous wick on the lows. Buyers pick that up very aggressively, and that also comes into play with the previous swing highs, that kind of zone that we had inside of here. We're finding some balance, right? They're forming a little bit of a floor just above that zone. And I think it's for good reason. We're seeing the bottom kind of shy off a little bit. They're not pushing lower anymore. And even if they do, there's just going to be a huge amount of buyers at that low anyway. So I think a lot of buyers are thinking, well, this might just rally back up. We haven't seen proof of that, right? There's no reason to go jumping on the buy train yet. I would prefer some better prices, but we are starting to kind of form a little bit of a floor. And if we can get a trap down that immediately reverses, right, pops its head back up again, that could be the sign that we're ready to gear up and push back towards those highs once again. But overall, I think we're just kind of stuck right now waiting for a little bit more info. Now looking at the USD variant, that was the Bitcoin variant, that's that big snap lower that we had all the way back down to the $12 in some change. We're finding a little bit of a lower high, right? We have a lower high coming across here. We have a nice wedge forming. So, I mean, the Bitcoin variant is a little bit heavier. The US dollar variant isn't so much. The one thing that does make me a little bit nervous here is that lower high. I don't like seeing a lower high and a failure, and I really don't want to see them break below a wedge bottom. If they break below a wedge bottom, we're going to be looking for a much deeper pullback quite a bit further down if that does occur. So overall, I think we really need to stay up here and try to keep our ground at these highs so we can continue that rallying to the upside. Then we've got Litecoin on some of the faster time frames, back to a 60-minute chart again. mostly a range, not really a whole lot going on. Again, the big dip that everybody was waiting for was right here, and from there, off of that $50 mark, 50.50, we had a beautiful bounce all the way up to 55s. We're stuck now. We're running into a little bit of a wedge coming across the top, and a wedge coming across the bottom that they're trying to break underneath. Now, that's important to note, because if they try to break underneath and it fails and turns back up, you better believe there's going to be a lot of buyers there that are going to make a run at another attempt at the highs. But for right now, we're just kind of getting stuck. And we can see this from before as well. This whole area is a big range top, and we could really widen it out and say this is probably going to end up being a range for a while if they can't get above these highs. They need to crack those tops and then continue, right? And if that doesn't happen, we could just be wedging out ahead of a final attempt and then a reversal all the way back down to the lows of the range. I mean, don't get me wrong, I wouldn't mind the cheaper prices on Litecoin, but for right now, I think we've got to stay hands off unless we get at least back down to 50s, and then from there we'll have to wait and see what they want to do. And then NEO, good old NEO. I hope you guys were listening when we were talking about NEO. What a rocket ship to the upside over the weekend, finishing off the move all the way up towards 39. They almost made it to 40, just around the corner, and man, what a rally up. Just gorgeous momentum to the upside, and a phenomenal run. Hard to say anything else. I think a lot of buyers in this case are going to be looking for a better pullback. One thing that really stands out here is we had a beautiful pullback here, right? Nice, probably 50 to 61.8% pullback, and then continuation. And notice how much more aggressive it is. These little tiny pullbacks that really didn't go very far. And even in the grand scheme of things, looking from the low to the high, this pullback didn't go very far either. It's not deep. A lot of buyers may not be in this yet. Even though we've already had a rally all the way up to 40 and there were tons of buying opportunities along the way, we may be gearing up for one last pullback before we leave the station here. And I would love to see it, honestly. I would love to reload on NEO. I think the big thing that stands out at the moment is the overall channel. We're getting stuck at the highs of that channel, and I would absolutely love to see them dip back around 25, and I think that's going to be the hot spot. Now, it's going to be a zone. Not, say 25 down to 23 is going to be the big area of interest on that pullback. That's about a 50% pullback. That's also the lows of the channel by the time they get there. We're going to have the previous swing lows acting as support underneath there. We're going to have the previous swing highs acting as support on a retest. There's going to be a lot of stuff going on if we can get a dip back down to 25, and that might be, like I said, the final point before NEO finally leaves the station. I still think NEO has a chance at pushing into 100 by the end of the year. It's just a matter of if they're going to get the pullback before that and then rally up, or if we're just going to keep grinding our way up. Either way, I'm a happy camper. Beautiful movement on NEO, and I'm definitely pumped about how that turned out. And then a new one on the radar, Tezos. Now, Tezos, this is a different exchange. We're looking at HitBTC because this just opened up on HitBTC. And normally, I don't look outside of TradingView when I'm just looking for charting stuff, but well, Tezos isn't open on a lot of different exchanges, so we have to kind of reach out a little bit. Now, when we're looking at Tezos, overall, the movement is pretty straightforward. We're mostly in a range and everything just kind of opened up, and it's really cheap right now. That's not the part that really caught my eye. Obviously, I'm very interested in the range lows. It looks absolutely beautiful to buy any low that's made around 367 or so. But the big thing that really stands out to me is this right here, right? Look at the market depth. The market depth is a little bit of a beast right now. We have shallow buying below price, and then all of a sudden, wham, we get this monster of a just buying volume stepping up underneath. Now, if we scroll down on the order book, we can see, you know, just normal buying, and then all of a sudden it disappears. Now, it didn't actually disappear, it's just being dwarfed by this next order, this monstrous order that's waiting here at the notable price of 21,000, right? So 21,000 is the area that someone is stepping up with some major cash, and they're doing it again at 2,000. So to me, this looks like a big buyer that is looking to build into a position at a good price. So really what I'm going to be keeping an eye on is if that order stays there as we pull back, if we pull back to that 21,000. If we pull back to 21,000 and that order doesn't move, you better believe this is going to be a floor for a while. They're going to be pinging off of that order for a really long time. They're buying, comma after 3, yep, 776,000 290 Tezos, and then another 700,000 lower. So we have some monstrous buying pressure below the market. It's really not that far. We have 3,600 right here, and it's not going to be that tough to imagine it going down to 21,000 just below there. So that is definitely something that has my eye, and I'm very interested to keep an eye on this to see what happens if we get that dip below there. Outside of that, though, that is going to do it for the outlook. Everything is looking pretty good. We just have to play it safe going into tomorrow. We don't have much happening when we're looking at tomorrow in terms of news or anything else. So like we always say, doesn't matter what market you're approaching, doesn't matter what you're looking at, always, always, always make a plan, trade the plan, follow those rules, and you'll be A-okay. Until next time, we'll see y'all then.